it's not a bill that was passed, it was a resolution. This is something that they've been debating in the budget. You heard the finance minister saying that, subsidies weren't taken away. It's just that it's reduced significantly. And she was very quick to add, and this is nothing new. It happened before, but you would see that when you look at the difference, what was included in the budget last year and what is in the budget this year, and you're seeing a difference of close to 500 billion naira, and you begin to get an idea of just how unwell things are.
Oh, yes. I told you in the first instance that Nigerian economy is in the dire straits, but don't forget, resolutions of the National Assemblies are very powerful instruments, and it's a well-advised president had better follow it. So resolutions, they are not laws, they are extremely powerful.
That's the resolution of the 7th Assembly. Do you think it will be binding on the...
the National Assembly of the Federal Republic of Nigeria cannot, does not terminate. It continues. The laws that were made last year are still the laws that we are using this year.
I'm talking about the resolutions.
Okay, well, the resolutions, of course, may be tempered according to the political atmosphere that will come. Don't forget, a new government is going to replace this one. And new government, of course, can ban its successor. So this talk about don't do this, don't do this, I think it's presumptive. It's absolutely unfounded under our laws and conventions.
This issue, this subsidy thing, first of all, do we actually know exactly how much, the cost of the fuel that comes into our shores?
The federal government and authorities say that for every liter, for marketers to bring in at a profitable margin, it must cost between 100 and 110 naira.
100
per liter. Yes.
That's what they say.
Yeah, that's what they say.
So now that subsidy that is being paid on top.
Yes, it's the difference between 87, which is the official, and the 100 or 110 naira, depending on the level of fluctuations at the international world markets.
How did we get to the point, besides the fact that the refineries were shut down, how did we get to the point where the marketers seem to be given too much power, so to speak, to hold the nation to ransom?
That's what you have in a system that does not tilt in favor of its own people. If you have a system in which the political power of the state is actually used for the purposes of social welfare and even the general well-being of the people, then you will not have such a system in which just few major marketers, they call themselves major marketers, hold us by the jugular. For example, what happened to those who were supposed to turn around our refinery and they failed to so do? What happened to them? See, when you refuse to sanction evil, you actually invite more and greater evil. So we can therefore not, the federal government cannot be hard to complain that some marketers are insisting on subsidy being paid before they bring in fuel. The reason is that what have you done to even that which you do have? So that's the issue. And at any rate, why should the federal government actually corner all the legal constitutional authority to be in charge of all? Can it not be decentralized? Can we not tinker with our constitutional provisions on mineral oils, particularly in the exclusive legislative list, to permit states to come into that fray? Look at the issue of policing. What's so special in federal policing that states cannot handle?
Well, I'm just thinking, though, a lot of people say that the regulation is the way to go, and that, when prices go up, when the price of crude oil goes up on the international market, naturally, the price of the products as well will go up. When they come down, you also said that Nigerians should be able to feel the impact.
Yes. But
some people will say that hasn't happened with diesel. How are we so sure that it's going to happen with petrol, for instance, if it's deregulated?
Okay, that's a very good, typical Nigerian question. You have a system that says do this, and then you have this result. And then you have done that, and the results have refused to come. Ditto for the power sector, where electricity we've privatized, or almost, yes, privatization, commercialism, DENCOs, DISCOs, has that resulted into electricity in your homes? So what we have is a situation in which one just wished that the federal government comes down hard on its own implementation. And if the bureaucrats are making it impossible for results to be realized as a sort of input of government policy, then such bureaucrats, I mean, we should just know they should just be sanctioned.
Yeah, because I'm just looking at it and I'm thinking that the Oil Marketers Association, they're pretty powerful associations. They sometimes consider themselves a very strong family. That's
almost like alternative government.
You know, that's where you get the words cabals and what have you and what have you. And it's not just in that sector it happens in almost every sector that, you know, the country depends on. For instance, even the cement sector, in the building industry as well. So how do you think then that, you know, can government really regulate them if you now say you want to go into deregulation, for instance?
Actually, the parameters for deregulation in every economy that desires to deregulate is the parameters that, first of all, you set the foundations for your infrastructure. There must be an infrastructure base, and then there must be competition in the system. A situation in which those who bidded for government deregulated companies were actually products of rigged process, then you cannot expect that such people will now do what is expected of them. If the system had been rigged, you know, how transparent are the system being? So if you now have a situation in which you do not have a transparent system, so you can't place something on nothing.
So you think that, sorry, Chamberlain, you think that the first way to go is to be transparent about the sector?
Transparent about the system, and then they get the legal framework to liberalize, to be liberalized really, and to remove the hands of government from certain things that can be done by the private sector.
Is that wise? Because we're talking about a very sensitive sector. Energy, electricity is one. Power, now fuel for the economy is another. Yes. Can government really say we're taking our hands off that kind of sector?
Okay. Now, if that is actually the real thing is that I have not seen any part of this African continent where the government takes its hands off completely from the supply of electricity. There's no part. Either in North Africa or in the southern part, electricity has got to be subsidized by the state, or government has got to do something for the weakest members of the society in order to enjoy electricity. So the situation we have in Nigeria is like trying to fly when we have not even begun to walk. But then these are the models that have been foisted upon us by the new economic team that we have, or the economic team that we have had in the last 5 years. And so that's what we're going to manage. I mean, you cannot just take an alternative policy when you have a government that is in power and then it's deciding to. So what you can do is just tag along, except of course if you have superior authority to send the government out of power. That's the only thing. But for now, there is nothing. I mean, we have a situation where the government in power says we are deregulating, we are selling these vehicles or whatever discourse to these companies, and then
except the transmission.
Yes, save the transmission, because the transmission, of course, cannot just be.
But I think this government says they also have to revisit that part of transmission to see what can happen. They could just I think
evacuating electricity from the generating plants to the point of distribution have become very, very problematic for the discourse, because at times you generate more and you are not able to evacuate what you have generated for the purposes of distribution.
So back to the infrastructure.
Yes, because of infrastructural weaknesses.
So who takes care of the infrastructure now?
That is the state. It is the
state. It's the job of the government.
Exactly.
But you know what I wonder is, looking through all of this and the recommendations that exist, if you look at the aviation sector, the telecom sector, and now we're talking about power and fuel subsidy, they ask themselves, all the regulatory agencies who are supposed to be on the part of the consumers to ensure that those who are doing business in that sector don't take the consumers for granted. Many every day complain of how they just seem to turn the other way, regulators. And so one wonders, with this power sector and fuel sector, for instance, what would they do differently? Because, I mean, I see you saying, look, all we need to do is, if we address the corruption rather than talk about removing the subsidy, because as he says, if we address the leakages in that sector, you might as well we have no business selling fuel at the price that we are now, because we don't import crude. It's just fuel.
It's more fundamental. When you talk about corruption in Nigeria, that's actually the main base of the problems in Nigeria. And addressing corruption, we can speak for more than 30 hours on the issues of removing corruption in Nigeria. It's like re-engineering, restructuring the Nigerian political system itself, and it's going to be a tough job. It's doable. It's not unachievable. It is doable. We can cut down on corruption. It cannot be eliminated. I doubt if that is possible in the affairs of any nation. But it can be cut down to manageable proportions, particularly in those areas that touch on the lives of the citizens, like education.
Let's get a final recommendation. Yes, you say they should remove it, but that won't happen in the first year, because there are certain things that they've got to put in place if they have to go ahead and remove it. What would your model be if they were to remove the subsidy, for instance?
I will first of all, want a situation in which government actually fixes its refineries first.
They fix the current one.
Yes, the current one. They can be turned around. Those refineries are actually not dead. They are just at the state in which you have not been able to service them, to do them in a working condition. They are just not dead. We still have people there, they still do some refining. The only thing is that they are not producing at installed capacity. For example, 300,000 barrels of crude. That's what is allocated daily for Nigeria's domestic use. But these refineries are refining less than 100,000 barrels. Actually, if our refineries are able to do or perform up to optimal level, we should be able to cut down on importation, or even eliminate importation completely. So I think government first, because if government is trying to say, oh, rents are very high, the first is for government to take a decision, a policy on housing first. Then you must also provide some housing, and then you can talk to the private sector, and then the competition between the publicly funded houses and privately funded houses will now set the price. That's actually what should be done.
Because they need funds to run the government, for instance. Yes. So if it's not sustainable, nobody will tell them to look for an alternative means and get things done properly. Thank you for coming in, Tunji Obiemi, a budget historian, speaking about the budget and the controversy about removal or retaining the fuel subsidy.